Okay. Welcome everyone to the 2024 Legislative Council Candidate Forum. I'm Ellen Feinberg. I'm the co-chair of Plan Boulder, and along with our co-sponsors, Empower Our Future, we'd like to thank all of you for coming out today. I'd like to introduce the candidates. We have Jovita Schiffer and Judy Amabile for Senate District 18, Tina Mew and Junie Joseph for House District 10, and Leslie Smith and Selena, help me. Yes, I was going to butcher it. Standing. Oh, okay. Selena's standing in for Max Woodfin. We tried hard, but we couldn't get Max here, so she's going to do an introduction. And then Max is going to post his answers on his candidate website. We're going to be passing out some index cards. Maybe you all have them. We're going to do question and answer period, probably a brief one at the end, and so pass your cards in. We'll try and get them to be concise. If you would be concise to start out with, and really importantly, could you write legibly? Sometimes it's really hard to read. Thanks to Bill Jellick, who's recording this, and it will be posted on the Plan Boulder and Empower Our Future websites, so you can revisit this if you want to. Now I'd like to turn this over to Bill Briggs, who's our moderator. Bill's done quite a few different kinds of forums for Plan Boulder in the past years, and he does a great job. So thanks, Bill. Oh, you got your own?
Good afternoon, and thank all of you for coming, and most of all, thanks to the candidates for being here. Now, this microphone works, but it's not speaking to you. It's speaking to the camera. So I've got to hold it up here, but I'm going to speak loudly so you can hear me. Let me kind of set the stage here. We're going to have some opening statements from the candidates, 2 minutes each. And then I've got a list of 6 questions that have been prepared by the organizers. And so we'll go down the row, and you'll have 2 minutes to answer those questions. And hopefully we'll finish that up about 1:15 or 1:20, at which point we turn it over to questions from the audience. So I'm just going to repeat. Okay, I'm getting signals from the back here. I'm going to repeat what Alan said. There should be white cards or pieces of paper going around. If you have a question, please write it out. And most importantly, make it coherent, make it concise, and make it legible. Because we've got some... Well, and we have some editors here that are going to toss questions that aren't concise, what did I say, coherent and legible. So first, I need to make a few disclaimers, as I usually do. I am not a member of Plan Boulder. I'm not affiliated with Plan Boulder. I have to confess that I have donated to Empower Our Future in the past, but I hope that doesn't disgrace me or disqualify me in any way. I have not endorsed any of these candidates. I have not contributed to their campaigns. At one point, I'll make up my mind who to vote for, but that hasn't happened yet. So, with that, I think we're ready to go. We're not. So the candidates are going to have to pass this double microphone system. And again, one microphone goes to the camera and one goes to the room. So we'll start at this end with Jovita, and we're going to cycle around so everybody has a chance to be the first respondent. Yes. I knew it. Yeah, I knew I was forgetting stuff. Okay, so right in front of all of you, where you can't miss it, our important part of this is the timekeepers. And you've got signs for 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and shut up. Time's up. All right. Same thing. So keep an eye on those, and we will be strict with time. And Jovita, you've got the questions there, right?
Not yet. I'm just reading my opening
You're-
statement.
Oh, all right. Okay, so the questions have been organized in three categories: land use, public safety, and climate change and energy. So here's the first question about land use. Yes. You're doing fine. Yeah, I know. It'll get worse. Can't believe anything Alan says. Okay, please, Jovita, you're up.
Hi there. I'm Jovita Schiffer. I'm a candidate for the open seat in Senate District 18. I'm running to fight for equity, economic stability, and wellness for everyone in Colorado, and to make sure that all children can learn and thrive here. I've lived in Boulder County for 25 years and raised 2 sons here. And for just as long, I've been a leader and advocate, first in the business world and more recently in public education. In my work with BVSD, I design programs, build community partnerships, secure millions of dollars in grant funding, and lead a team of 150 instructors and volunteers. I bring people together to help underserved children and families improve their outcomes and stability. For years, my mission was to help these families break the cycle of generational poverty. What I learned is that poverty is not the root of the problem. Our broken systems are. Poverty is a symptom of systems that aren't working, and many can be fixed at the state level. It starts with electing diverse leaders who have lived and experienced being impacted by our broken systems. As senator, my top 3 priority areas will be the outcomes that I hear the residents of SD 18 desire most: equity, economic stability, and wellness. By focusing on these outcomes instead of singular issues, I will continuously promote and support legislation with a holistic approach to meeting these larger picture goals. The 3 questions I will use to assess every bill will be: will the policy increase economic security? Will this policy be applied fairly to all constituents? And will this policy create more opportunities for physical, emotional, and mental well-being in our district? Achieving these outcomes is how we help communities thrive.
Well done. Right on the mark. Judith.
Okay, thank you. Can people hear me? All right. So, no. Okay, thank you for that. The double thing is a little confusing. So I'm Judy Amabile, and I'm the current state rep for House District 49, and I am running for Senate District 18. And I want to start by saying thank you to Plan Boulder. I'm also not a member of Plan Boulder, but when I moved to Boulder, Plan Boulder was an incredible community visionary group. And it is because of Plan Boulder that we have the Blue Line, that we have open space, and that we have access to light and air in our community. And you all, the members of Plan Boulder, the ones that are still here now, and the ones that came before, have really made a huge difference. And it's part of why this community is so great, and part of why so many of us want to live here. And you know, I think of Ruth Wright and all of the work that she did, and Steve Pomerantz and all of the work that he's done, and Alan, and it's made a huge difference. And now we find ourselves in a different place in time, and we have to develop new visions for how we're going to move forward. And I trust that Plan Boulder will be a partner in doing that work. So I'm very happy to be here, and I hope we'll have a chance to tell you about all the work that has happened at the State House and all of the things that I hope to accomplish moving forward. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. And yes, a big thanks to Plan Boulder and Empower. I echo all these things that Judy just said. And I also will say that when I came here in 1985, that is a little bit after Al Bartlett was just writing on chalkboards and teaching us all about exponential growth. So I think that, Plan Boulder has, I just echo all of this. We enjoy where we live because of the work of decades of Plan Boulder participants. So I'm thankful for that. My name is Tina Mew. I'm running to represent us in House District 10. As I said, I came here in 1985 as an undergrad, and I have stayed. I was a renter of many different apartments here. I am currently a homeowner. I'm a mom. I have a 15-year-old daughter at Boulder High. I know our community well, and I have worked here for decades trying to be of service. And the things that I care about and the things that I hope to lead on at the Capitol are born of deep community service. I have loved thousands of kids and worked with thousands of families right here in House District 10. And so I care and I'm passionate about education funding and public education in general. I was the president of our teachers union, so I care deeply and I'm dedicated to workers' rights and long-term financial stability. As a reproductive rights champion working for years for Planned Parenthood, I will be a champion for reproductive rights. So again, I'm so thankful to be here, thankful for the opportunity to meet you all and to share this experience with you. And this is what I bring. I bring this option in our representation at the Capitol. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here, and good afternoon to all of you. And yes, thank you to Plan Boulder and also Empower Our Future for putting this panel together. It is an honor to represent House District 10. I have been fighting for community members as a former human rights officer within the United Nations system, a former Boulder City Council member and Mayor Pro Tem, and your current state representative, and I will continue to do so if reelected by you. I am committed to equity and justice in my work. In my first session as a legislator, I passed gun violence prevention legislation, fought for criminal justice reform, and allocated funding to help Coloradans build wildfire-resilient homes. As your current state representative, I am the Aerospace and Defense Caucus co-chair, the vice chair of finance, member of the House Environment and Energy Committee, member of the Child Welfare Interim Committee. I am also a precinct organizer, former area coordinator, creator of the BIPOC Rising training to help elect BIPOC community members. You need an inclusive representative at the state capitol. And this is a commitment I make to you to continue to advocate to ensure that Boulder is a livable and thriving community for all, regardless of income. And I hope you all vote for me. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much to Plan and Empower Our Future for hosting us today. I'm Leslie Smith, and I'm running to be the next representative for House District 49. I'm a former Aquanaut and Boulder Valley School Board member. I had a 30-year career at CU as an environmental scientist, and I'm currently your CU Regent at Large. I love CU, and I was planning on running again to be Regent, but friends, the alarm bells are ringing. We are in a climate crisis. I want to bring my scientific background to the House to tackle this issue. I'm going to hold the fossil fuel industry accountable for their greenhouse gas emissions, and I want to move us towards a clean energy future. Public education is also very important to me. We need to better fund our teachers and our staff and provide more equitable education for all of our students. And for too many people, higher ed is just out of reach because of the high costs of tuition and housing. If elected, I'm going to fight for better funding for public education. Affordability is a universal issue I'm hearing across our district, both affordable housing and affordable health care. The House has passed quite a few bills this year to address housing, and I'm going to be curious to see if it puts a dent both in affordability and housing stock. And I feel that insurance or health insurance is a universal human right, and I want to see universal health care for everyone. And sadly, one of our campuses just experienced something we hoped would never happen. We had 2 shooting deaths on the Colorado Springs campus. We need to continue tackling this gun issue. These are my passions and what I can bring to the table as far as expertise, but I need to hear from you, and I look forward to hearing your questions today. Thank you.
Thank you. And for Max, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Selena Giacinto, and is this better? Okay, thank you. My husband is Max Woodfin, and he's running to represent District 49 in the Colorado State House of Representatives. Unfortunately, Max couldn't be here today because he's in the middle of a 2-week training with the Colorado National Guard. So while he's probably trekking up some mountain with a heavy pack, I'm here to read an introduction that he wrote before he left. Good afternoon. First off, I'm sorry I cannot be here in person. Hopefully I can convey why I'm running and what is important to me in a few words here. 5 months ago, and after a lot of soul searching, I decided to step into this race for House District 49's open seat. I did so because I'm concerned about the state of our democracy and want to inspire a vibrant and healthy primary in the Democratic Party. We have endured challenges to our democratic institutions for the last 8 to 10 years, and I know that we cannot conduct business as usual in this heightened and divisive political environment. 2 years ago, I returned from a peacekeeping mission to Eastern Europe, where I led a multinational liaison team to assist in democratic institution building. I had a lot of conversations about democracy and the concept of freedom while I was there. Many of my multinational partners from places like Romania, Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia had only recently come to experience the freedoms of democratically elected government. Moreover, the country where we were deployed had suffered from a civil war stoked by an authoritarian rule and divisive rhetoric. My belief, and something that I am pushing for at the local level, is that we cannot take democracy for granted, especially today. We have to engage with each other, and we have to do so with grace, empathy, and mutual understanding. With that said, I have a principled policy platform, which I would like to share with you now briefly, which is more brief than he would like. Check out his website, and I'll wrap up with saying,
Selena, take some time. Go ahead.
yeah, because
Yeah, go ahead,
this
read
is
it.
all I'll be saying for him
That's right.
today. Thank you. I appreciate that. Principled policy platform. 1, I'm a mental health counselor and former teacher, and I've seen people fall through the cracks every day. So I want to create more robust mental health care options for all people, regardless of income or geography. I will fight with everything I have to ensure women continue to access reproductive health care and have the freedom of reproductive choice and body sovereignty. As a human ecologist in my former life, I am passionate about public land management, and I want to create more access to public lands for people regardless of their abilities. And finally, I want to support the communities in House District 49 who are most vulnerable to climate change disaster. I live in the mountains in the burn scar of one of Colorado's most destructive fires, and I am intimately familiar with the risk and fear associated with wildfires, as well as other human-created disasters. I have many more priorities, but we'll stop here so that you can hear from the other candidates. If you'd like to speak with me, please do not hesitate. My website gives you direct contact to me, and you can also call or text directly on the number I am leaving here. I enjoy talking with people and especially like to hear perspectives that are different from mine. I'd like to close by saying this, and this is really important to me. We as Democrats are all on the same team. We may have different lived experiences and perspectives that shape how we view ourselves in the world, and I may have views that challenge the norm a bit, but I do believe that we generally want the same thing. So here's to a vibrant and healthy primary, and let's each support all the candidates who receive the People's nomination this June. Thank you, and please do connect with Selena to get my contact information if you would like to speak with me. Thank you for the extra time, and please do use the QR code to reach out to Max, and thank you for letting me step in.
Thank you. You're saving us 2 minutes per question, so you deserve a little bit of extra time. Okay, are we ready for questions? Is that what's next? Okay, good. I just want to make sure here. Okay. 2 minutes, yeah, 2 minutes apiece.
Oh.
I'll read the questions for everybody.
Okay.
So this has to do with land use. How would you, or how did you, decide that an issue was important enough that the state needed to take over local control of land use issues? The stated goals of these bills were to increase housing affordability and the use of public transit. How would you recommend tracking and monitoring the results to determine if they have had a positive effect, no effect, or a negative effect? It's a big question. Tackle it any way you'd like.
Okay, thank you so much for that. It was a little loaded too, I'll say, but I accept that. So last year, the governor and his team put together a huge bill with a lot of complicated stuff in it, and it failed miserably. It wasn't well stakeholdered. It was too big. And so as soon as the session ended, I thought the best part of that bill was the ADU piece. And so I began working on developing an ADU policy. And one of the things that was foremost in my mind was, how do we get actual ADUs built across the state, not just in Boulder, without trampling on local control and local zoning and what have you. And I think we ended up in a really good place where people can have personal property rights, and the state has a role. It is a matter of statewide concern that so many people cannot find an affordable place to live. And that has many downstream consequences, not the least of which is homelessness, but also for families that are trying to make ends meet. My 2 kids, my son and his wife, they cannot save enough money to buy a house, given how much they have to spend on rent. And so we are always trying to strike a balance between what is good for the many people and what is not going to hurt other people. And I think on a lot of these land use bills, we did strike a good balance in the end, because all of those got amended, they got stakeholdered, we took feedback from people like Steve Pomerantz, who called me, I think, 50 times. And we heard what you all had to say, and we made adjustments to the policy, and I think we ended up in a really good place. I need an hour on that topic.
Okay, Tina.
So I watched carefully 213 as well during the last legislative session, and I will just say I didn't like it. So I grew up in Colorado Springs, and the mayor of Colorado Springs at the time was John Suthers, and that's a good man. And nobody could pass any taxes in Colorado Springs, right? But he did. So he was a great representative, and he said of that bill 213, what do they think, we're stupid? What do they think, we're not dealing with these same issues and we're not able to do it? So I was a little embarrassed, honestly, that the only mayor of any city in Colorado who supported that bill was our own mayor. And so, Judy saying that stakeholding was poor is a great understatement. So that was a massive overreach bill, and I didn't support that. But I will say that this session, so they chopped that 213 up into a bunch of little parts. And I am a fan of consensus and process and all of that. I appreciate that people started having those conversations with municipalities right after the end of the last session, so at least there is some input as opposed to the surprising thing that happened with 213. I appreciate that when you take an ADU bill or transit-oriented development or any of those things, there needs to be an iterative process. So you're debating the bill, but you're going back to your community for stakeholding, and it's iterative. You're going back to get information from your community to bring back and then amend these bills so that, okay, yes, there's a greater good that we have to think about in the state, but we always have to think about representing the voices of the people who are here. So I like the process a lot better. I'm a little concerned and, about we will see what happens and we will see what we do in Boulder to best deal with this legislation from the state. But I like the process better than 213, so I'm hopeful about some of this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Julie, do you have anything to say about this?
Thank you so much. Thank you. This is a great question because when we think of land use policies, we're also thinking about equity as well. Housing, equity. Again, it was mentioned earlier when we think of our homelessness policies. But ultimately, yes, there was a bill last year that died, 213, because of issues. There were many stakeholders at the table, but the stakeholders could not agree. And this year, the governor's office came back with 1313, as you know, the transit-oriented communities bill. I did end up supporting this bill because at the end of the day, I understand the importance of access to housing, to meeting our climate goals, and also ensuring equity here in Boulder. Again, I understand the idea that growth, we have to think smart about growth because we live in a landlocked state. But at the same time, we also have to take into account, I was looking at the US Census Bureau in Boulder. In 2020, we had about 108,000 people. As of today, we have about 105,000 people. So we're losing community members. At the end of the day, I know for some that might be a good thing, but at the end of the day, we need community members who will help us with building our roads, keeping our schools open, keeping different businesses open as well. And also when you go to your coffee shop, you want to make sure there are people who are here who can help us with that. So housing is extremely important, but again, we also have to consider the idea that growing fast is not ultimately the answer because we also have to make sure there's affordability. I sit on the House Finance Committee, and that's when 1313 came before the Finance Committee. I had that conversation with the sponsors. I challenged them in ensuring that 1313 had the affordability mechanism as part of it, because we cannot just grow, we have to ensure there's affordability as part of the process. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Leslie?
Great. Well, when I heard this bill come out last year, having been on school board, we take local control very seriously, and we're only one of 8 states that has local control in our school boards, and the whole state takes local control seriously. So I assumed that this bill would be dead in the water, and it sort of was. And I also traveled around HD 49 and heard from county commissioners and mayors and so forth and say there was absolutely no stakeholding. And so I'm really glad that the process, they slowed it down, they broke it up, they did the stakeholding. One thing that I really like about the plan is that each community has to develop their own housing plan. So Clear Creek County is in my district, and talking to the city leaders there, they have conducted a housing plan, and Clear Creek needs housing for workers, whereas Georgetown needs aging in place and affordability. So I like that each community can craft what's best for their own community. In terms of increasing density along transit corridors, I think that makes a lot of sense. CU is now looking at the property at McCaslin and Highway 36, buying that property to build affordable housing for faculty and staff. And that certainly will help with some of the in-commuting from faculty and staff at CU because it's located right on 36. There's a good bus line. CU potentially could even provide buses to go between the two. There's even a bike path for, those athletic people that would want to ride to work. So I think there's a lot of different good ideas that are out there with this broken up bill. And I'm a scientist. I like data. And yes, we need to track if we actually are adding to the housing stock and affordability.
Great, thank you all. So Tina, you'll be next. You can grab your, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Jovita.
Thank you. I really like this question because this really describes a lot of how I think, how I solve problems. Housing, of course, has been an issue for many years, and what I've watched, even in preparing to run for office, is a push-pull happening between local municipalities and our state government. And Superior, actually the town I live in, has, because of 213, they decided to file for home rule because they don't want, some of the trustees have actually said this to me, I don't like it when the state tries to shove something down our throats. And I don't want to be responsible for whatever's not working in other parts of the state that now I have to fix it. And so for me, my response to this question is, in deciding whether to take over local land control, I would put in many measures before that. I believe in collaboration. Partnership is my specialty. That's what I've been doing for many years. I would work closely. Am I coming in and out? Is this working? I would work closely with local municipalities to ensure that they have opportunities for success, to ensure that they have a menu of solutions. There's no one answer for a more affordable housing. There are several options. They don't all work for every single location. So I think localities need to have some options. And then I love data. So this is why I love this question, because for me, when I solve a problem, I identify it, I look at solutions, and then I measure impact, because we have to constantly be measuring the impact of the solutions we try. Because even if they work, they don't always work forever. We've learned that in the last 5 years of how much our world can change. So we need to continuously be looking at the results of our attempts at solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I'm trying to see if the mic for the room is working. Okay, well, we still need the mic to go to the camera. So please speak loudly even though you're holding the mic. And now it does go. So here's the question. How would you define the housing crisis? Are we trying to house everyone currently in Colorado who needs housing? Or, is there a problem? No. Or, are we trying to house the projected growth in population? Sub-question, will the market create affordability, or will we need to regulate it? Sub-question, should this be linked to the long-term capacity of Colorado to provide water? What about services? What about protection of the environment? Just
Really?
so just grab one leg of that question and run with it.
I'm so sorry. Can you just say
Sure.
it again faster?
Oh, all right, faster. Okay, it starts out with, how would you define the housing crisis? Okay, then, are we trying to house everyone currently in Colorado who needs housing, or are we trying to house the projected growth in population? Will the market create affordability, or will we need to regulate? Should this be linked to the long-term capacity of Colorado to provide water?
All right. Okay. So first of all, I think it's interesting that Democrats are putting their faith in the capitalist markets to solve our problem of affordability in housing, right? Because capitalism doesn't really work that way. If you say, let's build more stuff, people will build more stuff in order to make more money. That's not an affordability thing. So that's the capitalism part of it. Should we build for the people who live here? Yes. Should we build for a little more growth? Yes. You know, as a scientist, I'll just say the earth is growing. We're just getting more people. We cannot actually, even if we would like to, put up a brick wall around Colorado and say nobody else can come. So we do have to do this. I also I'm a teacher, right? So I have friends who live in affordable housing, and I do see a need for retail workers here and, teachers here and firefighters. Steve Pomerantz isn't going to pour your coffee for you. We're going to have to, sorry. He might, but we're really going to have to make this an affordable community for all the people that we want to live here. Now, does that mean that an infinite number of people can live here? Of course not, because there is a carrying capacity to this community. There is a max. So, do we want it to grow to 2 million people? What's the limit before we are frustrated that our quality of life is declining to such an extent that all the work done prior to this is, undone? So, can you hold that up again? Is it 10 seconds? 10 seconds. Okay. So I'm sure there are many parts of that it didn't answer. As a scientist, I'll throw in the water and the resource use into the carrying capacity part of this question. I think we have to keep an eye on that, and we don't want to lose the Boulder that we love. Okay. All right.
Thank you. This is a very, very complex question, and I think part of the work, as I've mentioned earlier, is that we definitely have to regulate the market because, again, you can build and not have the affordability needed. Last year, in my first term, rent control came before the state, and I did support it. And part of the reason, again, is that we have to regulate the market because the market is not going to regulate itself, as we know. So that's very important. And we also, as someone who sits on finance, we have to incentivize housing. One of the incentives that we passed was House Bill 1434, which provide funding actually to SHAFA to create affordable housing. And the amount is closer to about $48 million each year moving forward, upward to $146 million. So we're trying to incentivize housing in the state, which is very important. But of course, regulation is needed because we don't have the necessary infrastructure. We have a water shortage. We have to take that into account as we are moving forward. Again, people come and go in. That's the nature of what it means to be human. We travel a lot. We move to different areas. So we have to take into account the market. But I think the piece that's also important that I've heard here today as well is the data. Data is needed as we do this work, because ultimately building or creating any type of policy without data shows a lack of accountability and transparency in the work. So I think that's part of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So I served on the Water Resources Advisory Board for the city. And every year we look at predictions 50 years out if we're going to have enough water in Boulder. And I brought up the issue of, at that point, like 10 years ago, the state was still growing quite a bit. And I was worried about water availability. And so I asked, is there ever any talk about limiting growth in the state of Colorado? And they essentially said, that is verboten. Do not talk about that. So, but we also are not growing right now. We heard from the state demographer last year at one of our board meetings, and Colorado is plateauing and starting to decrease. The only two counties where there is growth is El Paso County and Weld. Just read today that Boulder County is losing population. So is Jefferson County, and guess what? So are our kids. We do not have enough children for all of our schools. So we have to even talk about closing schools. So it's a mixed bag as far as where the growth is happening. But I do believe that we do need to regulate affordability. We have here where developers have to provide either affordable housing or in lieu cash. And so then we have affordable housing in Boulder, and we're getting pretty close to what our target is for that. So yes, this is a complicated issue, but it's not level across all counties in our state.
Thank you. So back up to the
Thank you. The way I would define our housing crisis is that 23% of families in Boulder County are not making it. I lost a home myself in 2012. And as far as answering the question about should we be building for everyone in Colorado who needs a home, or should we be building for projected growth, we need to do both. We need to be addressing both and planning for both. We can try regulating the market, but I don't think that's the only answer. I think we need to try additional things. We can't control our future population. We can't control how many people come here. We can't control how many children or families have here that grow up and then also need housing. And so we do have to monitor the water and the natural resources that we have. We have to protect our environment as we build more denser housing communities, transit-oriented communities, keeping climate resilience all along in our planning and how we're building. I almost lost a home to the Marshall fires as well. And so I am very, very keenly aware of how climate impacts our lives every day. And then we need to also address other affordability issues, because the families that are struggling to make it here struggle with childcare costs and also healthcare costs. These are all things that combined are what help make a family is either making it or not making it here. And of those of us who are making it, many feel like we're just a crisis away from not making it. And so I think that's an important piece as well, is to make sure it's not just affordable housing, it's a general affordability that we need here. Thank you.
Okay, that was a really big question. I want to start by saying there's building affordable housing, and then there is building to create affordability. And we can change our zoning laws, or we can implement policies like the transit-oriented development, and that will have an impact on cost if we increase density, if we build smaller places. But if we want to build affordable housing, we actually have to set out to build affordable housing, and we have to pay for it. Somebody has to pay for it, because by its nature, it isn't going to pencil out on its own. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that in Boulder with our linkage fees and requirements on developers. But we probably need to do more, because we are shrinking. We are not growing. And there was a great article in the Camera today that described how that could be, because we're all seeing apartment buildings going up, and we're thinking, how could it be that our city is getting smaller? But I think a lot of the houses are now occupied by one or maybe two people, where they used to have 5 or maybe 6 people. And that's certainly the case for me. We went from 5 to 2. And so we need to figure out, how can we make this town more attractive to younger people? Because without bringing in younger people, it isn't going to be good to live here. And that, I think, has to be part of the affordability goal. And we have to build a variety of things. It can't just be monolithic apartment buildings along transit corridors. Not everybody wants that. So we have to make sure that we're developing a variety of housing, and that it is meeting the needs of people who are here. And I agree, we also need to anticipate what is to come. And we do have to make sure that we have the water, the sewer systems, the infrastructure to support the people that are here and the people who may come. Thanks.
Thank you all for tackling that rather open-ended question, which I didn't write. So let's see, Junie, you're up first on this one. I thought I'd start this question with some background, so the question is as clear as possible. So the background is the City and County of Boulder are using the Housing First model to address homelessness, which is a national best practice set forth by HUD in 2017. This program offers subsidized housing that prioritizes individuals experiencing chronic homelessness, substance use, and mental health disorders, especially those with long-term criminal justice involvement, interactions with first responders in the emergency room. There are no requirements for sobriety or treatment in exchange for housing. Now to the question. What state policies are needed to help local communities address homelessness? Do you support the Housing First program? And if so, how might it be improved, if at all? When, if ever, would you consider Housing First to be an inappropriate methodology for treating homelessness? Junie, go at it.
Ooh, thank you. I fully support renters protection. Last year, I passed House Bill 1120, which ensures that if you're on SSI, an SSDI, and TANF, which is government assistance, it's a broad category of government assistance, prior to being evicted, your landlord has to take you to mediation. And if mediation fails and you have to go to court, the court would give you an extra 30 days if you are on SSI and SSDI, because we know, again, we want to ensure that community members are housed, because when people fall into homelessness, who pays? It's you and I who pays. And we end up paying much more than ensuring that the person stay housed in the first place. So prevention methods are extremely important as part of this work. And I do believe the Housing First model in Boulder County is an improvement to the other communities. Again, one comment I wanted to make as well about earlier when we talk about land use, we are doing the work here in Boulder. We are doing the work in Boulder County, but the rest of the state is not doing the work. I was on city council for 4 years. I have heard from other communities where they tell us that homelessness is a Boulder issue. They don't have to build housing. They don't have to provide any type of services at all. So when we have certain state mandate, yes, we have to work on local control, but these state mandates help Boulder because it alleviates us from taking on the brunt of the problem itself. So yes, we need to also work on our mental health issues as well, ensuring that community members have access to mental health support. And also one bill that we passed this year was House Bill 24-1171, which is the just cause eviction. Again, we want to make sure that community members stay housed. I'm sorry, I had to move really fast because he told me to stop. Thank you.
I think the Housing First is critical, but we can't have it without support services. So we need support for mental illness as well as addiction, because without that, they're not going to become self-sustaining. And that's what we really ultimately want, is for these people who have been living on their street to get housing, to tackle their mental illness or their addiction, and then they can be successful members of the community. I don't know enough, because I have not been a legislator. I don't know what sort of bills the state could pass locally to help with this type of an initiative, but I think it's a good way to go, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you. So I do support the Housing First model if practiced with a full-blown model, partnering with other programs. And City of Boulder is actually, they're not just doing Housing First. They have programs that are transition peer support programs to help the people that the homeless people that come in off the streets to transition into housing and create more sustainability in learning how to sustain their home. This has a 90% rate. The City of Boulder and Boulder County have invested nearly $25 million in these programs. There's a program for sober supportive transitional housing as well. There is permanent supportive housing for those who need higher needs and trauma-informed support. And as far as legislation, I think that we need to identify what cities are doing this well, what cities are seeing results. Denver tried to house 1,000 people by the end of last year, and they did, but 70% of them are back on the street. And so we need to focus on what is working, who's doing this right, what can we learn from them. We also need our cities and localities to work together, not in silos. That's something I've observed in just running for office for a year, how divided we are often. And I think legislation that would help is something that provides funding for localities that want to either expand upon what's working or try these new services. And also technical services. We need actual advisors that can come in. Maybe it's people from the cities that it's working in that can come in and help other localities try it and problem solve and make it fit for their town as well. Because again, it's not a one size fits all. And state and cities will work better together if we can recognize that. Not a one size fits all. Let's figure out which solution works best for this locality. Thank you.
Thank you, no problem. I'm small. Okay, so housing is an issue that's personal for me. I think many of you know that my son, who has schizoaffective disorder, was homeless on the streets here in Boulder, lived at the homeless shelter until he got thrown out, and was also criminal justice involved. This has been a big focus of my legislation at the state. I don't think Housing First is working, honestly. It works for a small subset of people who are unhoused due to some circumstantial crisis in their life. And for them, yes, let's get those people into housing. But for people who have serious mental illness, for people who have a serious addiction to drugs like methamphetamines, that is not a solution. And they have a negative impact on the other people that are living in that housing. So we need a continuum of care. We need places for people to go that are appropriate for where they are in their journey of illness. And if we don't create this continuum of care, we will not solve this problem. So one of the first things that I did was sit on a committee that directed $65 million into residential step-down beds. And they're just being opened this year. And it is a really important piece of the puzzle. But we also need to put more money into addiction recovery. And one of the other things we did out of that task force was we're building 2 facilities that are like Fort Lyon. One of them is in Watkins, and one will be in the North Denver metro area. That is a place where if you have addiction issues and you're homeless, you can go, you can get withdrawal management, you can get treatment, and you can stay there for up to 2 years while you recover and put your life back together again. And those are the kinds of programs that we need to expand on, and this is the work that we need to do. And it isn't one size fits all, because every human being is different, and they all need to be treated for the thing that they need. And that is the direction we have to go in. Thank you.
So I'm just going to say, I don't know if Housing First is the thing anymore. And Jovita brings up this really good statistic. So I was watching Michael Johnston with, great hope. And that's saying something, because teachers don't love Michael Johnston. But I was watching in Denver. Can this guy really do something about this homelessness situation? But the fact that 70% of the people are back on the street says something about this idea in general, right? And so I absolutely am treatment first over housing first. And you can see some of these models. There's a sort of promising one in California, this CARES court kind of thing, where you can, families could say, so Judy could, sorry, use you as an example, but she could call and she could say, I'm concerned about a family member and I need these services. And then this person would be assigned, a care team that sees about their housing, if that's an appropriate thing, sees about their medication, if that's a needed thing, right? And so I think that this is the direction that we need to go. And this plan in California doesn't necessarily involve just getting someone into a house. In fact, I was talking to some law enforcement officers here who were telling me, sometimes you get somebody into a house here and they're flipped right back out because they have mental health issues that are going unaddressed. They've got addiction issues that are going unaddressed. So I am thankful for this work to create a continuum of care. We need some kind of an acute place so that when we have people on the streets who are, when we have criminal behavior, we don't take somebody who's an addict or who has mental health issues to jail. We have an acute center, and then we have sort of step-down care, all the way so that they can access the affordable housing that we want to provide. And then that's when we provide housing, not housing first. Thank you.
So let me ask if there are people who have questions. If you do, can you pass them down this way? And if you have a question but don't have a piece of paper, put your hand up. Okay, we need paper and... Okay, Leslie, you're first up on this one. And Tina actually started to answer the next question, so let me give you a little bit of background. California is enacting a statewide care court system to holistically address addiction, mental health, homelessness, and crime through court-ordered individualized interventions. By coordinating at a state level, resources can be more effectively mobilized to help people. That's the background. Questions. Colorado is experiencing a severe escalating drug crisis. Addiction paired with a broader mental health crisis are resulting in unprecedented levels of chronically unsheltered individuals and concerns about crime. I said question. Would you support a similar system, meaning similar to CARE in California, in Colorado? How would you fund it? Are there other changes you as a legislator would champion in Colorado to address addiction and mental health? Leslie.
Well, this is the first time I've heard of this program that California has, but it seems like a very compassionate and well thought out way of going about trying to tackle this issue, because it is definitely escalating. In fact, part of what I've done in the last year when I've been traveling the district is visiting the jails in all 4 counties where HD 49 is. And it's just appalling to go to the Boulder County Jail and just see the crowding. It's difficult to place women because there's many more women inmates than normal, and a lot of them have mental health and addiction issues. So this seems like a really responsible way of trying to address this problem. And obviously, we don't want these people in jail. This is like the worst place for them to be because they're not getting treated and they're just getting sicker and sicker. And I saw that firsthand, and I saw that talking with our sheriff. So yes, I would definitely support something like this. And I think, Judy, did you say that there might be something coming up next year on this? So Judy can talk a little bit more about this. But I would certainly champion something like this. I think it's a very good idea.
Thank you. Pass the mic all the way up to Jovita.
Thank you. I would consider supporting this, but I would want to know, especially since it's so new, I want to watch California first and see if it's working, see how effective it is, see what the results are, wait until they've worked out the kinks, because usually when we try new things, there are also things that we don't even foresee happening until we start going down that road. And so I would want to see what those results are. And then if they are successful, I would absolutely support something like that here. And as far as how I would fund it, I recently read about how Medicaid is now being considered as a source for housing as well, because housing is part of our wellness. Housing is part of our maintaining our health. And so I think that is wonderful news, actually, that could be a new option for funding to help with our housing and homeless issues. As far as addiction and mental health, this is something that it's actually a passion of mine, working with children for 12 years, and especially teenagers and also college students, because I do consulting work for CU Boulder as well. I believe we have to have programs that treat the acute mental illness that we are seeing today, absolutely. And I also think that we can have programs that start to mitigate and reduce these issues for the future. And that starts with investing in our children and really providing proactive and preventive measures around mental health. I was 44 when I learned how to start going through a divorce, how to start taking better care of myself, how to choose better relationships, how to make better choices for myself around emotional wellness. We could teach that to a fifth grader. And so I really believe in proactive and preventive measures starting at childhood, starting with pregnant moms, honestly, all the way through our lives, and especially reinforcing in middle and high school and college. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this question. So last year I ran a bill called Pathways to Care. And what it is a study that says, let us look at places like California and New York and see what it would take for us to implement something like that here in Colorado. And the study just came out, and I'm meeting tomorrow with a group of the people who advocated for this study. And we are going to talk about what is the legislation that can come out of this study for next year. And we went to California. We went to Sacramento, and we met with people who had been implementing this Pathways to Care. And what we found was this is not going to work in Colorado. They don't actually do involuntary treatment in California. It is all voluntary, and they are spending billions of dollars to help a very tiny amount of people. So we have to come up with our own Colorado way of handling this problem. But we absolutely have to have a pathway to care where we get somebody off the street who has a serious mental illness like schizoaffective disorder or schizophrenia or bipolar with psychotic episodes. This is not about mental wellness. This is about serious diseases that need serious treatment. And we have to get these people into care whether they know they want care or not. And we have to be extremely careful in how we do that because we do not want to take away people's freedoms. But it is no freedom to say we're giving you the freedom to die on the street. We have to help people. And that is what I'm going to be working on as a result of this bill from last year if I get elected to the Senate next year. Thank you.
So I accidentally talked a lot about this already, but I'll say my information doesn't come from going to California. It came from watching 60 Minutes and listening to Gavin Newsom talk about it. And so you can all check it out. But so I wasn't aware of the fact that they weren't implementing the mandatory acceptance of medical care because that was something controversial in California. So it must have just been so hot that they couldn't actually do it. But I think that that's sort of, that's something we really need to consider here. So when a person reaches a point that they can't make medical decisions in a reasonable way for themselves, and I will just say I've talked to Jen Livovich about this, and I've talked to our law enforcement, and they estimate that in Boulder, there are about 75% of our unhoused neighbors who are suffering from some kind of addiction, and that many of them are self-medicating because of mental health crises, right? Mental health issues. And so I think we need to take a look. I mean, this law enforcement who works daily with this population said to me, you know what, Tina, sometimes people just simply won't go and they don't want to get treatment. And so these are sort of high flyers. And if you combine that with criminal behavior, something has to be done about this. So we don't need to put people in jails. I am all for this care court thing, but I also think that we're sort of sliding in this discussion into public safety. And you can either put someone in jail or you can give them the services they need. And sometimes they're not in a position to make that decision on their own. So I think we have to take a really close look at that.
Thank you. This idea of a continuum care is very important, whether here in Boulder or throughout the state. And as you've heard, the California model may not be workable here in Boulder. And I've also watched that 60 Minutes interview for some reason. So I've heard about it as well. But I think part of the question was as well whether I would support a state level coordination. I think that's very important to have both local communities, city councils, district attorneys' offices, also the state level involved, and the county help coordinate our mental health crises, because we need all hands on deck and all different stakeholders involved, and also at the national level as well. We need them to coordinate the system that we need in order to ensure all of our community members are safe. Part of the question as well asked, how would we fund these particular services? I work as an attorney, and I can tell you my experience. I work in dependency and neglect cases, so when when parents get their children taken away from them and they're arrested when they go to the jails, all jails are not created equal. Some of them have mental health supports, others do not. And when they do not have these mental health supports, what ends up happening is that the government said, hey, without mental health support, you can't see your kids or you can't have access to them. So we have to think creatively. So again, as a state legislator, every year, the corrections department come before the state and ask us to fund their mental health services within the court system. We have to ensure that as well. Because again, we don't want our criminal justice system to be just punitive. We want it to be rehabilitative. Because some community members who are living on the street or people who have cycled through the jail system. So if we can ensure that while they are incarcerated, that we provide them the system and the processes so that they can be reintegrated into the community so they don't have to be out there in these streets, that would be very helpful. So I hope to continue to serve the people of Boulder and also continue to support funding those services within our jail system. Thank you.
Thank you all. So the mic comes up to
Very long.
Well, okay, here are two more shorter questions on climate change and energy. In a recent deal that legislators made with the oil and gas industry, Colorado lawmakers agreed to give up on all pending industry and environmentalist-backed bills, including a set of air quality bills with tougher regulations.
Yeah.
Sure. Do you have two? Number. Yeah, okay, good, sorry. Okay, so passing community choice energy, also known as CCE legislation, promises the possibility of competition, local energy-related innovation, and potentially lower-cost energy to Colorado communities. What is your level of enthusiasm for making CCA legislation a priority, and why? That's to Joey.
Okay. You know what? My first thought when reading this question is when Xcel shut everything off to prevent fires. And then the stories I heard afterwards around someone sitting in their wheelchair, being stuck in a wheelchair for 30 hours. And so I think we absolutely should have community choice and power. We should not have one entity that controls all of our energy. And we also need to be prepared, as part of climate resilience for if shutting down is what it takes for us to prevent a fire, then let's plan really well for that. And in the meantime, find other competition and other options for Xcel so that they're not the ones controlling our power all the time. And so, yeah, I think we need to implement resilience in many different ways by planning ahead and making sure that our community has all of their needs met when we do have a crisis, especially if we're going to proactively be shutting power down. I think that was poorly done and we could do way better. And I think the more options that we have in energy, in a community choice energy, I think in the long run, that will benefit our communities.
Thank you. Judy.
Thank you. I have a high degree of enthusiasm for community choice energy, and This past session, I actually ran a bill with Representative Kyle Brown to implement community choice energy here in Colorado. We spent a lot of time meeting with stakeholders. We had a very comprehensive bill drafted, and we started talking to the environmental groups. We started talking to Xcel Energy. We started talking to the governor's office, and we started talking to labor unions. And we met with a brick wall at every turn. This policy was not just unpopular, it was super unpopular. And we basically got the message the energy office was a hard no. And for those of you who don't know, community choice energy means that we would still have Xcel providing the poles and wires, but we would purchase our energy from different providers. And the promise of that is that we could invest in more renewables if we wanted to, or we could try to get a lower price if that was what was more important to us, or we could try to do both. But at the end of the day, we never got the bill introduced. It's totally drafted, and it's a good bill, and it will help reduce our reliance on fossil fuels if that's what we want. There were concerns that some communities might implement community choice and buy more fossil fuels because they would be able to. Now, I think that's a little bit of a red herring, but there was so much resistance last year, and so what we discovered is that if we want to do this, we are going to have to start chunking it off. Maybe it's a pilot, maybe it's just one city. And we're going to have to start over again with the stakeholding to see if we can peel off anybody. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to this other than I'm a huge proponent of community choice energy, and I like again looking at California's CCA model, and they are able to do it. There are places around the country that are able to do this, and so this blocking, I'm very sad to hear about it and not surprised to hear about it. I mean, in this country, we've decided that our utilities are all going to be a public-private partnership, right? And so in that sense, of course, you have these big sort of monolithic private companies with lots of lobbyists who are very interested in, negating any competition and making sure that, that's their job. They need to make profits for their investors, right? So I am not surprised at all that there's this brick wall, but I am also, I think we still have to keep pushing for it. So to be honest, when we were contemplating our own uni here in Boulder, I had my doubts about it because it wasn't big enough, because we need to do this for our whole state as opposed to here. Now, some said to me, well, Tina, we were going to model it, and I'm for that, but I think that the promise of community choice energy and the promise of this competition is great, and we need to keep hammering at it, and we need to have people keep reaching out. And when Xcel does things and sort of ups the ante like they did with shutting off everybody's power, that just makes it easier for to mobilize people in the community to have a stronger voice about this. And so yes, I'm super enthusiastic about it. I will work hard. I am slightly deterred by the brick wall, but not totally deterred by the brick wall. It's okay, good. It is upon leaders in this state, in the legislature, to keep going forward with this because it's what we all need.
Thank you. I fully support CCE, and for me, it's about democratization, transparency, and accountability. And if you remember 4 years ago when I ran for council, I promised you that I would support municipalization, and I did. I was one of 2 council members who voted to continue with municipalization. So I keep my word with the community. Again, when you think about what happened on I believe that happened between April 4 and April 6 when Xcel shut down our power, they took away power from us as well. Because after or during that time, I reached out to community members to ask them, how are you feeling? What's going on? Reach out to me and let me know. I received about 100 to 150 emails, phone calls, text messages from community members who lost food, who lost power, and there were people who were not able to reach out to me as well. And then I reached out to Excel, and after I reached out to them, and I made certain requests based on the emails that I received from community members, and I'm still waiting on Excel today. Again, they don't have to be accountable to us. And I believe CCE is about accountability. It's about having our voices heard. To me, it's about democratization. Again, transparency, because we're paying Excel a lot of money. They need to underground, and they need to do more work on renewables. And how do we hold them accountable? They don't feel like they have to be accountable to us. So we need a system and a process to ensure. Association, I'd love to share it with you all if you want to see it. Again, we need to hold Excel accountable, and we need CCE because, again, I understand some people may think it's costly and there might be issues with feasibility, but that has never stopped us from doing the work that we need to do for our community. Thank you.
I strongly support this also. And in fact, I knew that Judy and Kyle were working on this bill, and I called her yesterday and I said, what happened to this? I never heard anything about it. I am completely flummoxed by this. It just seems like such an obvious thing that every community would want to have choices as far as where their electricity comes from, where their energy comes from. And again, one of my first planks in my campaign is related to clean energy and holding the utilities accountable for their greenhouse gas emissions. So I want to try to move us as quickly as we can to 100% clean energy, and this is one way of doing it. We tried to develop our own muni. It passed. It didn't pass, I think, 2 times votes by the community, but this seems like a really, really good option. Let us decide what utilities that are using wind and clean energy, what utilities can we use for our own energy. And, I think maybe one way of doing that, maybe Boulder could be a pilot, breaking it down in a smaller way. Because, Excel, we all know, we were all very, very frustrated by what happened. First of all, the Marshall Fire, and then they went way overboard with the big windstorm that we had. I'm from California. Pick up the phone and call PG&E. They've been doing this for years. They've been successful in shutting down areas. And I think we could also do microgrids, so then we're not having to shut down whole huge swaths of energy in case there is going to be a fire. And then we need to underground too. So there's so many issues with Excel. We need to get away from them. And I think this would be a great way to do it. And I like the idea of Boulder being a pilot for that.
Great, thank you. I'm glad you can all agree on something. Okay, the mic back up to Judy. You heard the introduction to the next question, so I think I'll just cut straight to the question. All got that? How would you use your office to start planning for the post-oil and gas era? In particular, how will you work to prepare state and school districts for less tax revenue and other economic impacts? And that's to Judy.
Okay, thank you. So I co-sponsored the deal that they came up with because what we were looking at were some very dangerous ballot measures. And we did move the needle on air quality. The bills that got passed and the raising of the severance tax are significant. And we're going to use the money from the severance tax to fund transit, and we're going to use the money to fund environmental issues around our land and water. I forget exactly what it was. But we do have to start to prepare our communities for what is going to happen next. So last year I ran a bill that set up in the Office of the Future of Work, an office that is completely dedicated to helping communities that are going to be impacted by the loss of revenue from oil and gas, not just the communities, but also the individual people who are working in that field, and also people who are going to lose their jobs due to automation. not animation. That might be me, but due to automation. And I will say, some of the work we do at the State House is a little cynical. The reason automation is in this bill about oil and gas is because the labor lobby didn't want a bill that was just about oil and gas, because they thought that meant we're going to move away from oil and gas. And we don't want to just say that out loud. But we are going to say it out loud, because we are going to move away from oil and gas. And we do need to be proactively thinking about how do we replace that with meaningful, high-paying jobs for the people who are employed in this industry and for the communities that are getting their economic vitality from these industries. And there are lots of really good ideas out there, and we have funded a lot of rural innovation already, and there's more to do.
Thank you, Tina.
All right, so I was talking to the pipe fitters, you know those guys. So the pipe fitters are interested in, they're very concerned about this because, you know, natural gas runs through pipes. And so they said things to me like, well, Tina, will you support making everybody in Colorado retool their home to the cost of $30,000 to $40,000 to electrify? Because our people in vulnerable communities can't afford that at all. And are you going to do that? Because, you know, are you going to be a legislator who asks for that right now? So I had to say, listen, I have taught about energy sources to middle school kids for decades, and I've watched the evolution of this. It was 5 minutes ago that we were really glad that natural gas was taking over our electricity production to get rid of that dirty coal, right? Which is still, that's a true thing. So it's good that coal is on the wane. And now, you know, we've been happy with the natural gas for another 5 minutes until now we're like, okay, well, that's not good. Let's go toward green energy. And I absolutely want to go all the way toward green energy. But I had to tell these pipe fitters, listen, you guys, you got a few decades before this is a done deal. Nobody is going to be able to go to the legislature and say, no oil and gas, everybody retool their house tomorrow, because we simply can't do it. The grid won't sustain it. I could go on and on about this, but the grid won't sustain it. And just as a little thing that I taught the sixth graders, right, we talked about sectors of the economy. So, you know, you got agriculture and industry, and you've got residential and commercial, and you've got transportation. If we went all electric right now, that would put greater than about a 38% more drag on that would be 38% of our U.S. energy budget that suddenly goes electric on a grid that we can't even sustain right now. So anyway, I am for this. I think we do need to prepare for the future, but we really need to think about these actual realities of the transition and including workers along with us.
Thank you. Junie.
Thank you. How will I prepare schools, districts for less tax revenues? I think part of the conversation, as someone who sits on the environment, I sit on finance, I'm the vice chair of finance, and I also sit on the environment committee as well. And I was hearing the conversation about the pipe fitters, and I've met with them as well. And this time around, they've decided not to endorse me because of a lot of the work that I have done to champion environmental sustainability in the state. And I understand that it is hard for those who work in oil and gas. And I have made the promise to them, even though they have not endorsed me because of the environmental legislations that I have championed and ran, is that I will continue to support just transition as a legislator. That's very important because we know that fossil fuel is not sustainable. It's not sustainable. And our kids deserve a fair shot at a decent community with good air. So I will continue to support just transition. Last year I passed a bill, I believe it's House Bill 1134, and in that bill, prior to that bill, if you had a homeowner's warranty insurance, it didn't have to give you an electric option if you decide to replace your appliances. But now we have that option. Again, we have to continue to electrify our homes, and we have to do the same thing too when it comes to the school districts, electric buses, and ensuring there is retrofitting in a lot of these school districts, providing incentives and tax credits to ensure that we're moving toward our goal or sustainability goal. I understand it's going to be challenging for many members of the community. Again, that's why just transition is extremely important as part of that process. Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie.
Thank you. Well, we probably all have talked to the pipe fitters. So it was really interesting because when I was sitting there meeting with them, he brought up my QR code and said, "You want to go to 100% clean energy by 2040. What about us?" And I said, "I will think about you. You know, have you talked to your members? Like, it is going to happen. You need to help plan also to get your workers trained up in a different way to get well-paying union jobs that have benefits." So it's a two-way street, I think. But obviously, we have to have this happen. It's going to happen, and we need a very good plan that includes the workers in the communities where they're losing jobs and income. Just this last session, Senate Bill 218 passed, which is to modernize the energy distribution. As Tina pointed out, we don't have the infrastructure, if we changed over to 100% electricity, to support movement of that electricity from point A to point B. So this bill will provide grants for apprenticeships to increase the number of lines worker, because we're going to need those people, to build the infrastructure. Also, there's in this bill, utilities of over 500,000 customers will have to upgrade their distribution systems as well as underground their lines. So we need to not only move towards the clean energy environment or utilities, but we also have to harden our resilience against climate change. And so that will help us when we have winds here in Boulder, right? High winds. So we have to be prepared when we have these high winds, and the best way to do it is to underground those lines, which is expensive.
Hey, pass the mic, please. Please, Jovita.
So I've thought about answering this question in a few different angles. And because what I hear, and I'm actually thinking about the bill you were talking about, Judy, that you wrote with Kyle Brown. Kyle actually told me about his ideas for that early on before session started, and it was a great idea. And then later on, when I would check in with him, and he'd say, "Nope, nobody likes it." And my first thought with that is, which is actually a thought with all of the things here that we've talked about, all of the issues. You're all here because you want change. You want something different in government. You want something to get better, or maybe you don't want change. So that's the other thing. Change is something that it's scary, and it's a very common, normal feeling to be afraid of change. My work, even I did it in the school district for the last 12 years, but I was originally an HR director for many years, and I did change management. I helped organizations grow from 70 employees to 4,000 employees, and that's a huge change. But my skill is around transitions and planning for change. And so when we're talking about change, people get scared because the first thing we think is, well, how is that going to impact me? Transitioning to a post-oil and gas era, many people can't even conceive of how do we get from here to there. That bill, again, that Kyle had told me about, people are afraid of change if they don't know how you're going to get there. What do you mean by change? What do I have to do? How is my life going to change when we do this? And I think that's a consideration in all of these bills as we transition to a future that has to be climate resilient. And so I think it's transitioning. I think it's good transition plans. It's helping people understand what the steps will be. And I think that we have to ask ourselves about all of these bills, what are we willing to do for change?
Great. Thank you all for being really diligent about observing the time limits. In spite of that, we're behind time. So I think that means I'm talking too much. It's the only explanation. So we have some questions from the audience. I think we'll have time for 2 or 3 of them, but I'm going to ask you to keep your answers even more brief. Can you time a minute? Is that possible? Okay, so let's go for aim for a minute here. So let's see. That was Judy first. Tina, you're next. If elected, what bills will you bring forward? Given the possibility of a veto by the governor, what are you willing to champion even if it makes waves?
Okay, 1 minute. So first of all, I am dedicated to public education. I am dedicated to funding for our public schools, and so I'd like to work on that immediately. I also am very dedicated to workers and workers' rights as the former president of a union. We have farther to go in the state in terms of providing collective bargaining rights to workers around this state. That's another thing I'm interested in championing. And then I also would like to work on this community choice energy thing and the transition, the reasonable transition, taking everybody with us, because they will be the backbone of the transition to the clean energy economy. So I'd like to ensure that they have a place, they have preferential job treatment, and that's what I'd like to start working on. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. I will continue to do the work the promises that I made to you. When I ran for the State House last year, I made 5 promises to you that I would work on environmental sustainability and climate resiliency, on protecting children and families, criminal justice and the rule of law, keeping youth in schools, renters protection as well. I will continue to do this work. I passed 19 bills last year, passed 17 this year. So I have passed about 36 bills during my first term as a legislator, and I will continue to do that work and also do community engagement. As soon as June 25th, the next day, I'd love to meet with you and have more conversation on how I can best support the community on the type of bills that I run. Again, the idea here is that I want to be a partner with you in this work that I do, and I will continue to do this work because I've delivered for you and I will continue to deliver for you. Thank you.
So there's a couple bills that I'm thinking about that just because I've been talking to community members across my district, which is large, and none of them have to do with Boulder except for the dispersed shooting. We had an issue about that up the canyon. It's an issue in Allens Park. It's an issue in Clear Creek. The other thing is I have Gilpin County, which has gaming. And so they're very concerned about the amount of money that the gaming industry is bringing in, but very little of that money is going to the county, and they're having to shut down their child care center, and they can't have the rec center. Just more broadly, the committees that I'm interested in is water, ag, and natural resources, education, as well as energy. And those are the areas that I have expertise and where I really think I can bring. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I've already talked a little bit about the things that I'm wanting to bring next year. One is a bill that I had this year and we couldn't even get it introduced, again, because we had some resistance. But it is about getting to 100% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2040. And the bill is all written and it's kind of ready to go. We just need to do some stakeholding. I also have talked to a lot of people here in Boulder who live in housing authority apartments. And they are having a lot of friction with the management of these housing authorities. And it turns out they are basically, they have no oversight, but they have a lot of money and they are caring for a lot of people who are living in these housing authorities with housing vouchers or without housing vouchers. And I want to do something about oversight of housing authorities. And then the Pathways to Care bill, that is something that we're going to look at this report and we're going to bring legislation next year to address that. And then there are things about competency. And then I just want to say to Leslie, twice I've run this county shooting bill and we haven't been able to get it through, but it's a good bill and I'd love to work with you on that.
Great. No, that's fine. Yeah, it's to Junie next for the next question. I'm going to abbreviate this a little bit because you all know this. The EPA has reclassified Denver and Colorado's northern range as severe violators of federal air quality standards. What would you do through legislation to improve the air quality in the Front Range? And that's Junie.
Ooh, thank you for that. Again, you've heard that we cut a deal so that oil and gas would not bring a lot of the bad legislations that they intended to bring this session. I sit on the Environment E&E, which is the Energy and Environment Committee. I will continue to do the same work, which is push forward legislations that will improve our air quality. And also there has to be regulations, more regulations, and also last year I passed House Bill 1272, which set aside funding for EVs and e-bike credits, and it's one of the biggest in the nation. We have to continue to do this work. Again, we have to regulate. We also have to provide incentives to community members to get e-bikes and EVs, and we also have to have the infrastructure needed as well. We've passed quite a few bills between last year and this year to improve infrastructures when it comes to EVs and e-bikes as well. So again, the work is multi-pronged. It's not just one thing, it's multiple things. And again, another thing that we did this year, I just wanted to add, we have put a fee on oil and gas in order to fund air quality measures. Again, those are the type of work that we're doing at the legislature, and I sit on finance, and that bill came before finance, and I voted yes on it. So that tells you the type of work that I will continue to do on your behalf. Thank you.
Yes, so speaking of the legislation that passed, it's Senate Bill 229, which directs the Colorado Department of Public Health and Education to propose rules for the State Air Quality Commission to decrease NOx. So it's NOx that emissions that cause us to be out of compliance with ozone. To cut by 50% from the 2017 baseline in the next 6 years. We have pretty tight rules on methane emissions, but I feel like the state does not have enough teeth. It doesn't help to have rules to regulate and then no oversight of that regulation. So that's something that if I get into the House, I'm going to make sure when we set these rules up that they are actually implemented and measured, and then the industries are fined or lose their license if they're not complying with the rules.
Thank you. Air quality is another issue that's really important to me because both of my sons have asthma, and thankfully they are grown. They're 16 and 22 now, but there's nothing scarier than taking a 2-year-old to the emergency room because one of their lungs has collapsed. And so I think we need more regulations. I think we also implementing incentives for industries to improve their practices, holding them accountable for bad practices. And I think I go back to my model of solving problems where we have to identify what is working, what is not, and measure impact, and continually be looking for ways to improve and hold industries accountable.
Thank you. So it was either last year or the year before that we set up an environmental justice action task force. And this year, House Bill 1338 came out of that. And it is about making sure that particularly communities that are near polluters are held to account. And so that bill, and I'm going to read it because I did actually think to bring this, it's going to improve their response to pollution complaints. And then it's going to analyze the cumulative impact of pollution on air, soil, and water. And that is a lot of it directed at Suncor, and it was brought by Elizabeth Velasco and Manny Rutinel. And we're going to see legislation that will come out of this analysis of the cumulative impacts, and I'd like to be involved in that. Thanks.
Well, I want to talk on a more local level. So I really like multimodal transportation. I really like the things that we're doing in our cities to make it easier for people to ride bikes and for make it easier for people to walk. And, there are some places that I just won't ride my bike and I won't walk because it's not safe and it's not convenient and all of that. And I love what Boulder is doing to help with that, to make it more feasible for people. And I would like to see that around the state. I also think that, I know there's some legislation around this already, but I have more concerns about small oil and gas businesses like orphaned wells and small things that slip under regulation sometimes by the PUC. And so I'd like to see more legislation about small oil and gas producers. And I would also like to see, Judy mentioned Suncor, and we do have to think about industrial pollution and more regulation for our vulnerable communities, but for all of us, really.
Great, thank you. So, goes to Leslie for the next question. This will be the last question. It's fairly straightforward. You could almost say yes or no if you wanted to. Will you advocate for banning assault weapons as your first priority? What are your top arguments for or against such a ban?
I certainly would advocate for it, but unfortunately, it got through the House this year. Last year, it didn't even get that far, and it died in the Senate. So I don't know, and Judy and Junie, maybe you have a better idea of how we could get this passed. But certainly, we have cities like the city of Boulder that banned assault weapons, and we had a legal fight over it. So I am a proponent of this, and but I'm not quite certain how we can get it through, especially with this governor speaking about vetoes by our governor.
Absolutely. I mean, it would absolutely be a priority, banning assault weapons. And Polis might do the same thing again, as far as not supporting. And so banning such weapons, I have such a history as a child. Things were so different, even just with gun control in general. And safety is especially important to me around guns. Actually, I don't want to give it a long answer. I'm going to cut it short because I know we're short on time. But I would absolutely make this a priority to ban assault weapons. And another day, I will tell you about my gun stories growing up.
So I sit on the Judiciary Committee, and we heard the assault weapons ban this year. We had 200 or more people show up to the Capitol. We were there till 1:30 in the morning, listening to testimony, and it was gut-wrenching to hear the stories of people who had lost their lives or had loved ones who lost their lives. The bill had headwinds, and it wasn't just with the governor, although I will say he didn't seem particularly excited, but also the absolute leading proponent of gun violence prevention legislation, Tom Sullivan, who lost his son in the Aurora Theater shooting, was not in support of this bill. And as a result, it really never had a chance of getting through. And we can all ask Tom Sullivan why, but I'm guessing he has a reason. I voted for it. I voted for it in Judiciary. I voted on the floor of the House. I want us to do it, but I think that it's complicated.
So yes, I think it's a high priority. And to go a little tangential to this question, I think this has to do with gridlock at our Capitol. And I think it has to do with polarization and people acting like activists as opposed to statesmen. So we've got, people on the far left. We have Republicans who are in lockstep about defeating these bills. But I'm going to tell you, my father is a retired Air Force general and a veteran of, the Vietnam War. And that guy says to me all the time, you can quote me, nobody should have assault weapons. I completely support an assault weapons ban. So I know that there are Republicans in this state who would absolutely support that. And the fact that we're not getting this representation at the Capitol has to do with the polarization at the Capitol. And I am a person who likes to listen to all of the people. I'm very good at working across the aisle. I know Colorado isn't just Boulder and Central Denver, and I think that's the kind of work that we need at the Capitol to get things through like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I would most certainly support an assault weapons ban, and the justification is because it's a public safety issue. When I was this session, actually, the people who, the legislators who brought this bill forward, I am proud to say that I was on the floor helping them count votes as well, because I know this is extremely important. Republicans did not kill this bill in the Senate. Sullivan is a Democrat, and he did not believe, for one reason or another, that this bill should move forward. I had a community member here in Boulder who told me she doesn't support, she's a Democrat, and she doesn't support the assault weapons ban because she said, the term, the definition of an AR, we need to work better at creating a better definition of it. So according to her, it's too loose, it's not restricted enough. So there are a lot of complexities when it comes to assault weapons. I fully support it, and I will continue to support it. And I hope it's reintroduced again this year, and I will be counting votes again to get it out of the House, and hopefully it's supported in the Senate and sent to the governor's desk, and he gets to veto it himself, because we didn't give him that opportunity this time, and I hope we do. Thank you.
This way, yeah. Jovita. Okay, we're going to do it here. The instructions call for 1.5 minutes for closing arguments. So keep it kind of brief so we don't get thrown out of here. And say whatever you'd like.
Thank you. So thank you all for being here. This has actually been a great experience, and I also want to thank our organizers. I'm going to close with who I am and what I bring to the Senate and what I think we need in the Senate. And I'm going to revisit what I opened with, which is my holistic approach to legislation. The bills I pass will work together. They certainly won't work against each other. Right now we have 2 bills that were passed this year that could potentially work against each other. And so those are the things that I think of legislation as something that should be holistic with specific outcomes in mind. And I think we also need a new culture of problem solving, where we're looking at problems, we're looking at solutions, we're measuring the impact of every bill and making sure that it's still working, and that we're looking at prevention. And those are that's how I tackle problems, and that's what I will bring to the Senate. So thank you. If you have any questions for me, feel free to reach out. There's cards over at the table, and I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you guys all for being here. It's a beautiful day, and you could be doing stuff that's a lot more fun than this, I'm guessing. I have spent the last 4 years in the legislature working on a variety of legislation, and also working on constituent services, and working behind the scenes on the budget and in various ways to make positive changes for people in our state. And I do this work by collaborating, by being open, by bringing all voices to the table, by reaching across the aisle when that makes sense, and by trying to bring people together. I am not, you asked the question of, will you be tough enough to get your bill vetoed? Well, I only have a limited time on earth, and a much more limited time in the legislature, and I don't want to bring bills that will be vetoed. I want to know, what are the hurdles to getting this signed into law? And then I want to do those things. And if it's not possible, then I'll move on and run a bill for something else, because I want to help people. And that is my greatest goal in being a legislator. And I feel like I've done an excellent job. And I hope you'll elect me to go to the Senate. I would really value your support. Thank you.
So I have been knocking doors and knocking a lot of doors, and I go to a door and somebody says, "Oh, you were my son's science teacher 20 years ago, and now he's an engineer." Or I go to another door and somebody says, "Oh, you worked for Planned Parenthood? Thank you for being there in the trenches for that." Or, "Oh, you're a scientist? You have a doctorate?" I'm a scientist too, and I think there's not enough science in the conversations at the Capitol about the environment and climate. Or somebody says, "You know, I'm a retiree, I'm a para-retiree, I was a public servant, and that's a lifeline for me." And so it's very validating because I have done a lot of work in this community for our community members for many, many decades. And because I've been here for so long, I know this about this job. It's two things. It's about representation first, and that means having the voice of everybody here, not just some of us and not just a subset of us, but all of us. And then it means leadership. Part of this job is leadership, and that means that we all move together in one direction. We don't say, "You people don't want to go the way I want to go, so we're going to charge ahead." It means all of us moving together forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you again. I want to thank Plan Boulder and Empower Our Future for putting this panel together. I have had the pleasure of serving you as your city council member for 4 years. When I ran for city council, I told you that I would fight for environmental sustainability. And part of the reason why I was running was because I believe in socioeconomic diversity, that every person in the community deserves a seat at the table, regardless of income. And I have been that voice on city council. As I mentioned to you today, I was one of two council members who voted to keep our municipalization process going. I also voted to support our minimum wage. When I ran for the State House through the vacancy process, I made 5 promises to you. I told you I would fight for environmental sustainability, which I did, criminal justice, which I did, LGBTQ plus right and reproductive health. I've passed bills on these issues as well. Education, I have passed bills on these issues as well. I will continue to champion and fight for you as your legislator. And as I've mentioned to you, and as I have shown through my track record, is I keep my promises to you. I passed 19 bills in my first session, and 17 in my second session, for a total of 36 bills. And I will continue to fight for you because you matter and the work is important. I do this work with urgency and care, compassion, and humanity, and I will continue to do so. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for hosting us. I've learned actually quite a bit from listening to you all, so thank you so much. I'm a lifelong learner. HD 49 is a large district. It's the western part of Boulder and Larimer counties, Gilpin and Clear Creek. And I've spent over a year now talking to elected officials and community members. And you can imagine the issues are quite diverse across this very diverse district. I have over 100 endorsements from current and former elected officials, including Congressman Joe Neguse and our Attorney General Phil Weiser, Marchman, Fenberg, and Roberts, and the majority of the county commissioners in all 4 counties. I have sat on several policy governance boards, and I have a track record of inclusive stakeholding and transparency in my decision making. I will reach out to Plan Boulder and Empower Our Future if I am running a bill that would impact your mission. And I learned early on when I was a school board member, I will never please everyone, but I will always explain my votes. I would be welcome to have your support in the June 29th primary. And when you go to vote, just remember Smith, common name, uncommon leadership. Thank you.
Thank you all. You've done a tremendous job. I've been enlightened. Let's all thank the candidates. And thank you all for coming. Have a good rest of your day.